the scale of the storage space. Adding additional roles like Flex increases system requirements. So while slower computers can get by as a basic file server, you're going to need to account for CPU overhead, especially for transcoding. Now let's talk about form factor. Computers are available in all shapes and sizes, from complete PCs the size of a pack of gum to entire racks that contain only the storage for a bank of machines elsewhere in the data center. The most common variants, or form factors, are as follows. ATX is your classic. It's the big beige box size. It usually features at least 5 expansion slots and a taller chassis. You can find these in mid-tower and full-tower configurations, which basically just indicate height. Full towers tend to be easier to work with, but are much more difficult to move around and find a home for, so they've been falling out of fashion. If you're not sure what to buy, an ATX form factor case can accommodate any smaller size motherboard, although installing an IPX motherboard in one of these is more than a little silly. Although you think that is an aesthetic that you want to embrace. Micro ATX is smaller than ATX, with at most 4 expansion slots, and for most people, that's totally sufficient. But you should always check to make sure that you've got everything you need. You'll find some of the more interesting case designs in this size, like these cute cube-shaped ones. Like ATX, you can fit smaller form factors like DTX and ITX in here, and you don't look as silly if you do. Mini ITX and TTX are the smallest mainstream sizes, with only 1 and 2 expansion slots respectively. These are the boards you'll find in the tiniest builds, and can often pack an impressive variety of features into their diminutive size. However, their I/O can be somewhat limited, and if your goal is to go as tiny as possible, you'll either want to get a couple of larger builds under your belt first, or pay extra careful attention to your case manufacturer's documentation. A DTX board may fit an ITX case, but also may not. And if you have a larger GPU like you were, it may not fit in your case of choice, at least not without some difficulty. The next big question is arguably most important. What's my budget? If your answer is anywhere from less than I'd like to I'll take what I can get, then your best bet is often to buy used. You can find off-lease business machines available for a fraction of their original price. As we've shown a number of times in the past, these can be a great starting point for a new build. Most of the work is already done for you, and many can be improved for a relatively small budget. Another option is to look for previous gen hardware. You can sometimes find killer deals as retailers clear out old stock to make way for the next big thing, but this is mostly applicable to here. The good news is that solid-state components with no moving parts, like CPUs, rarely fail, and components with worn thermal compound or bad fans can have those repaired.
I nearly always start my builds around my CPU and GPU because, apart from being the most expensive components, and therefore taking up most of my budget, they also dramatically narrow down the other parts that I might select. For example, I won't be able to buy an Intel chipset motherboard if I use an AMD CPU, vice versa. And I won't be able to use a small form factor case if I've got a gigantic triple slot graphics card. When shopping for a CPU, there are a few things to keep in mind. First is that across brands, or even different generations of the same brand, specifications like clock frequency and cache are not likely to be useful indications of performance. You can find out more detail about this video, but that doesn't mean that you can ignore them. Right, let's say you've decided on a CPU series, but there are literally dozens of options. Obviously, choosing the best one is easy. Just sort by price, high to low. But is it really that much faster? Is it worth it? Well, this is where the specs can help you make direct comparisons between multiple products in a single lineup. Take, for example, Intel's Core i9-11900K. This is an 8-core CPU with 16 threads that runs up to 5 billion gigahertz. That's the turbo state, of course. Its base frequency is just 3.5. Meanwhile, the Core i7-11700K is also an 8-core, 16-thread CPU that only runs at up to 5 gigahertz, meaning that the real-world performance between these two chips is 6% at most, but with a price difference of over $100.
There's more to picking a CPU than raw power. Sometimes you want to do great graphics, sometimes you want more or faster PCI Express lanes, and sometimes you just want less heat and noise. On the subject of PCI Express, or PCIe as it's commonly known, historically each new generation has doubled the per lane bandwidth of the previous one, making it a major selling point for shiny new platforms that will deliver. However, the importance of this for gamers and regular consumers alike can sometimes be overstated. Outside of the raw final copy tests, the PCI Express Gen 4 and 16 will perform very similarly at Gen 3 speeds. However, again, recognizing this, manufacturers are beginning to build their newest generation add-in cards, like GPUs and SSDs, with fewer lanes to save on power and on cost. That means that a CPU with fewer but faster lanes can avoid bottlenecks that otherwise fight on performance. For example, as of writing, AMD's APUs can have as few as 10 PCI Express lanes available for use, only 4 of which are actually useful for a GPU. If a future APU upgraded those few lanes to PCI Express Gen 5 and matched it with the Gen 5 GPU, that limitation becomes literally half as impactful. It's worth pointing out, by the way, that some motherboards and even some chipsets might differ in their PCI Express version support, even from one slot to the next. So, pay close attention. If your first choices put you over budget, it's time to experiment and bargain hunt. For Intel users, an F-Series CPU might be a good option, as those lack integrated graphics and cost a little less to buy. While for AMD users, paradoxically, buying the G-Series CPUs nets you integrated graphics and a